You can study the history, number one, of the conflicts, and then of things more sinister like King Leopold of Belgium and what was Zaire, which became the DRC later. And people whose arms would be chopped off if they didn't meet quotas in terms of collecting. I think it was rubber at the time. We've got our own stories in South Africa of exploited labor. We've got the transatlantic slave trade into the US. It's almost the nature of the world. If you are trying to make a profit, like we said with pharmaceuticals, you need a low cost of inputs. The cost of production must be low. It's one of the reasons why our currencies on the African continent, in my opinion, are intentionally kept low and we don't get fair value. And it's part of the reason why things like conflicts and instabilities and coups, etc. happen.
The church must start to get the funding, to get the big weapons, to be able to fight back, right? Because you're not going to tell a billionaire who's telling you, get the COVID jab or else you will not attend your services. It's not going to happen. But the moment you have weapons, you say, no, we're having our services. I mean, you think about the Catholic Church, right? Do you think there's any nation that could ever touch the Catholic Church? Pen, I think let me start by giving you your flowers.
Don't do that. Is that how we're starting?
You created this industry.
I didn't create anything, man. Shout out to MacGyver and the rest. MacGyver didn't create the industry. They're just the biggest in South Africa.
But when we looked at stuff, I was looking for quality. I was looking for quality of thought, quality of engagement, and you really brought that. I think for the young generation who were never watching the news, they found themselves watching Penuel for 2 hours. And our parents only watched the news for 30 minutes, by the way.
No, man, shout out to Tribal Media House. I have to give the guys props. They're really world-class in the stuff they do. I remember every time I go speak to kids, I tell them, please don't use my podcast as a benchmark because it's a full production house. They've bought their equipment over years of hard work in reality TV and corporate videos. So if you were to look at the videos we're shooting, to try and get to the level of quality and equipment that's used would be very expensive. And YouTube doesn't pay for that. But shout out to the guys. They made me look good, I guess. And shout out to the guests as well. Some of my guests have been amazing. People keep quoting Uvusi Tembekwayo. Dr. Umar was one of the big episodes. American audience, of course, helps. Even though YouTube took the episode down, and hopefully we'll put it back up after it's been re-edited.
Have they taken it down?
They took it down. There were conversations we had around the pandemic, conversations we had around the pharmaceutical industry and those things. And for them to...
And people don't even know that YouTube does this sort of thing.
No, of course. Look, it's not our mother's house. It's not the Nkandla compound. Yeah. So the people with agendas behind media platforms will always...
Do you think it was the pharmaceutical industries that asked them to take it down?
We can speculate. I don't know if we're allowed to speak about it, but the pharmaceutical industry is extremely powerful globally, and people may not know. To put it like in simple terms,
they are the real drug dealers.
To put it in simple terms, pharmaceuticals are drugs.
Exactly.
And they are the biggest drug dealers, and because they've kind of monopolized the industry, they regulate it and they believe they are legal. Someone once said, when 100 businessmen are doing something, it stops being illegal. Because they start saying, it's fine. If enough of us say, look, we think cannabis is a thing, we lobby the right politicians, it becomes legal and we move. So pharmaceuticals, along with banking and a couple of others, maybe...
Do you think they planned COVID though?
Is that where we're going? Well, you want to get this episode taken down. Basically.
Are they going to take it down
I'm just asking.
With your response?
I'm just asking. It's your platform. I don't mind.
If you think they planned COVID, wink.
Must I blink twice?
Okay. That's enough. No.
Let me say this. I do try to be considerate of the platforms. The whole point of Alternative was meant to be for us to be more uncensored, not irresponsibly. Of course, it's not about creating platforms for us to bash people and aggressive hate speech and making people feel some type of way. But there are certain things we discuss that are public knowledge. Like, it's not conspiracies, it's things that are out there. As an example, the idea of a vaccine is something that's meant to prevent some type of infection. We didn't create this. They created this whole process of how vaccines come about. And they broke that process and then made us agree that this is still a vaccine, even though it had not run the mill as normal vaccines would. On top of that, soon thereafter, they released pages and pages of side effects, which had not been raised before. And the people that ended up taking it became the guinea pigs, which is meant to be voluntary. And they'll argue to this day that it was voluntary. But the number of people that have lost their jobs, that couldn't get onto school campuses. In America, people are now certain companies are being asked to hire back. But no one is really like paying damages. We don't know in time if there will be huge lawsuits. But essentially, we're run by mafia organizations. Now, you own a funeral parlor. You live in an area where no one is dying, like Japan or Italy. If all of a sudden, there's skirmishes, there's mass shootings, someone would have to ask that this guy's business is now booming. Could it be that he was involved?
Could it be?
And the pharmaceutical industry has been sued many times, billions of dollars over the years, in some of the funny things that they do. So they are not the cleanest people in the world. And if ever there was a conspiracy theory that they were involved in the creation of something so that they could profit, similar to the military-industrial complex that funds conflicts, like Lord of War, Nicolas Cage, it wouldn't be shocking. These are the type of people we're speaking about.
And this is interesting because you mentioned war. Someone said the people that are benefiting from Russia-Ukraine war are the companies that fund these companies that make military equipment. And one would have to think to say they are in no business if there's no war.
No, these are facts. It's like the funeral parlor example. There's a nice clip.
I think the funeral parlor is different because people do still die though. But the war one is different because if there's no war, there's no war.
Well, if you're a funeral parlor around conflicts, you could probably work with the guys and be like, hey, we need the conflict. Our business is doing great.
I've never thought of it.
No one thinks about it, of course. Yeah. And we're not saying funeral parlors do this, by the way.
Now I'm thinking twice. I'm like,
John F. Kennedy was one of the presidential candidates at the US elections. He was running as an independent.
Yeah.
There's an amazing short video where he speaks mostly about BlackRock, but he also mentions a lot of the other companies. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but there's a lot of big companies that manufacture weapons, American companies. And the amount of money and the returns they've made with Russia and Ukraine, with Israel and Palestine. There's a military aid that America also gives to Ukraine, which is one of the concerns President Zelensky of Ukraine had with Trump coming into office. Is he going to cut that budget?
Or is he going to continue? Yeah.
Or is he going to continue? So the aid comes in the form of someone will be paid for you guys to get help. And that's where people make money. The second one is the manufacturing of weapons. There's a company in South Africa that I think is unknown generally, is so amazing. And if I could, I wish I could sit with the founder. It's called Paramount, the Paramount Group. Ivor Ichikovitz. We used to be very close friends with Robert Gumede. When Robert Gumede bought into the Lions rugby franchise, Ivor was there as well. Very closely linked to some of the ANC heavyweights back from when apartheid ended. But he's built a phenomenal business. If you go on to the Paramount Group on Google, you'll see the type of weapons that they manufacture. And that's in South Africa. Like their offices are in Midrand. This is like a serious Lord of War. And you're like, who does he supply? Where? Who is this guy?
Who's buying these weapons?
Yeah. But war is big money. The other thing about war, is war is the one place where you can suspend regulation.
Yes.
And what wars have done is it's argued that the most medical innovations and the most technological advancements have come through war, because that's when there's huge budgets to try out almost anything without following due process. And you can experiment with people because people are going to die anyways, and then see where it goes. And everyone kind of
drones are proving that. The fact that these guys are using drones to be able to strike one another. But I mean, talking about war, Congo.
Yeah.
A lot of people have given us insinuations that Apple is behind the war in Congo.
Apple.
And that if the Congo had to be stable, Apple would suffer. Because that would mean they'd be buying equipment for their phones and the iPads and the Apple devices at a reasonable price.
Yeah.
So instead of allowing the Congo to be stable, they'd rather destabilize as they continue mining at no tax, ridiculous prices.
Sure.
and just continue making a big profit at the other end. Do you think corporates are also involved, or is it an individual thing? Is it a man's thing, or is it a company thing? Is it a cult? Is it the World Economic Forum? Is it the Freemasons? What is it? Is it the devil?
Why are you asking such deep questions? I thought we were here to drink water and be like, hey, Mpho, how's it been? How did the elections go? Why are you being Vusi Tembekwayo now and speaking on platforms? Light things. Mpho Dagada is trying to be Vusi Tembekwayo 2.0. I see him on the posters. I see him. Must I answer?
I think so, yeah.
For some of us who are deemed cynical and pessimistic, we obviously believe we are realists. We understand that we live in a world that is run like any other jungle. And there are people that have the means, the desire, the heart, or maybe they don't have the heart to be able to do whatever needs to be done to consolidate power and influence. With that in mind, the way things operate and the way decisions are made is run by some of these people. They are very comfortable to experiment on drugs that end up killing people, harming people. You can study the history, number one, of the conflicts, and then of things more sinister like King Leopold of Belgium and what was Zaire, which became the DRC later. And people whose arms would be chopped off if they didn't meet quotas in terms of collecting. I think it was rubber at the time. We've got our own stories in South Africa of exploited labor. We've got the transatlantic slave trade into the US. White people used to enslave themselves. Before that, people may not know. There's stories now about some of the Islamic nations that also used to enslave Africans at some point. It's almost the nature of the world. If you are trying to make a profit, like we said with pharmaceuticals, you need a low cost of inputs. Your cost of production must be low. It's one of the reasons why our currencies on the African continent, in my opinion, are intentionally kept low.
That is so true.
Yeah. And we don't get fair value. And it's part of the reason why things like conflicts and instabilities and coups, etc. happen.
Yeah.
Africa is a glorified factory, farm, and mine for developed nations.
Sure.
And it's easy to look at Africa and then look at the US, look at Western Europe, maybe parts of Asia that we supply with agricultural produce, raw mining output, etc., etc. But this happens even within country. Even within country, you may find that there's certain neighborhoods that are well off, certain communities that are well off, and it comes at the expense of. Stupid example. What's called the Stellenbosch Mafia, which we'll just say is minority white wealth, which is mostly based in the Western Cape.
Four white families.
Four white families. Four.
Yeah.
You say four?
Yeah.
Who are the families?
You can name them.
No, you go for it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, let's continue.
The four families. People want to know?
Yeah, there's a whole book about them where they talk about the four white billionaires that crafted or created the environment that we all live in.
Do you know their surnames?
Yeah, I do. Some of them. But I wouldn't want to talk about them. People can just go and buy the book.
What's the name of the book?
It's called Billionaire. Something about billions.
It's a South African
book. It's available exclusive.
Speaks about the four families that run South Africa, essentially.
South Africa, yeah.
Oppenheimers?
Of course, they're there.
Rupert's?
Of course.
I'm not sure who else would be there.
If it serves me well, but we don't even need a book. We can just...
Don't run away. Don't do what you're doing.
Naspers?
You're obfuscating and...
No, I'm not running away. Naspers?
Koos Becker,
yeah.
Okay.
PSG.
Yanni Mouton.
Aha.
Those are the four families.
Those are the four families that we know on the stock market. But apparently, the gentleman who owns ZZ2, the farming...
Sure, the Van Sale family.
The Van Sale family.
Yeah.
Apparently, their assets are not on the JSE. So people
if they're a private company, they don't have to discuss.
Exactly. So people don't know. But apparently, he's also he's also one of the wealthiest in the country.
Yeah, you're making me deviate. But there's a lot of unknown or not as popular families in South Africa that are extremely wealthy.
I think many of them might not be they might not be dominant in South Africa. They do business in South Africa.
Sure.
Yeah.
The Kirsch family. Quite big. May rest in peace.
What do they do?
So Nati Kirsch is from Poch, and he built a big chunk of his wealth in Eswatini, helping to industrialize.
Okay. What do they
He's
own
got
that
dual
we all
citizenship.
know of?
I'm trying to think in the South African context. I think at some point Metro Cash and Carry.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah, but he owns a big cash and
Cool.
carry in America called Jetro, which prints tens of billions of dollars a year.
Oh, and he lives in South Africa.
Yeah, generally he's been living in South Africa.
Wow. Wow.
At
Is
some
he-
point he owned the Chrysler building. He does
Okay.
fencing for the royal family in Saudi.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he's a big
Okay.
boy.
Yeah. Once you mention cash and carry, I mean,
No, he's a
yeah,
big boy.
Those guys supply the whole of Africa with goods.
You've got Brian Joffe, of course, who used
Brian
to run
Joffe of
Bidvest.
Bidvest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although, I mean, those are shares, but okay, we'll give it to him. I don't think he's at that top 4 level, though.
More than Koos Becker.
I don't think he touches Koos Becker.
So Koos Becker and Yanni,
I don't think.
yeah, we don't have to debate it. We don't know people's monies.
But
I
no.
wouldn't put Koos Becker and Yanni Mouton in the top 4 personally.
I would put Koos Becker definitely. I mean, WeChat. The man is literally printing money in China.
But you're saying that's shares.
No, it is shares, but I'm saying it's an application that people use. WeChat also has a banking feature in it.
Yeah, but
in
he
China.
doesn't own it.
Well, I mean, he's owns a very large portion of it. He basically
A large.
gave them the money to start it.
Yeah. Look, let's not debate it. Anyways.
And he owns the media in South Africa. You must never forget, whoever owns the media, that's where the true power is. He can dethrone anyone if he decides he wants to run a political campaign against or
You're
for.
triggering me.
It's media.
You're triggering me. I'm going to try to not bite. Anyways, I don't think Koos Becker is as powerful as people think. It's just my personal opinion.
I definitely think he is.
It's okay. Similar argument could be made for Patrice, by the way. I don't think it's as powerful as
Can
people
we
think
name
he
a
is.
few black people?
No, I want to go back to that question you asked about the DRC.
Cool.
Because you're triggering me to answer things and say things I don't want to say. Kirsch, Joffe, may rest in peace, Eric Sampson of Max Steel. Max Steel, very big company.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
They
I
were
know
making, I think at some point, $100 billion in
them.
revenue
Yeah.
at some point.
I mean, every building we know, you order
Yeah.
steel from them. Yeah.
So there's them. And then there's a lot of South African families that are now based elsewhere.
Yeah.
Dalstein is a big boy insurance.
Yeah, he is a big boy, but I not as big as Abo Rupert and Abo Naspers, but he is a big boy.
There's someone else I wanted to mention. And then again, it's shares, right? But you feel some type of way about it. People like Ivan Klassenberg at Glencore.
Oh, yes.
Also
yes, yeah.
get
But
put on the list.
He's part of the top 500 in the world, I think, if I remember well. Wealthiest people, of top 1,000.
Sure.
Yeah, guys
So-
can just
so-
check me. But yeah, he's massive.
So, yeah, I don't want to get triggered, but I'll just say this in my opinion, and hopefully I'll get the book and I'll read it. I think looking at net worth is misleading, number one. I think looking at shares is misleading. I think looking at rich lists is misleading. I think looking at figureheads and faces is very misleading. I think there are people that fundamentally influence how a country is run. And in the South African context, now going back to the DRC, I think the people that run this country are proxies for other global interests. So you can look at the Oppenheimers who came in here because they were meant to come and serve a purpose for Europe and the Americas. They became very wealthy. But arguably, is it Harry Ernest? Might be Ernest Oppenheimer. They were basically sent here, same with Cecil John Rhodes at some point and Barney Bonato. They were sent here to come and do important work that was needed. It's like sending an Afrikaans Christo visa to go and set up ShopRite or Pep across, and you're serving a big purpose that's going to enrich us later. Where I got distracted, when you spoke about the 4 families, is it's like minority wealth in this country that is white. They will invest a lot of money ensuring that black people in townships can't uplift themselves because that's where they make the bulk of their money.
True.
If black people run the spaza shop industry, upgrade it into supermarkets, get to a point where they start getting into the value chain, farming their own goods, manufacturing their own foods, etc., that is not good for your ShopRite,
Yes.
Woolies,
And their
Cambridge,
malls.
Boxer.
Don't forget their malls.
And their malls.
Yeah.
And their big farms. Bono,
Yes.
ZZ2, Clover, Afgred. It doesn't serve them. So they would have a vested interest to ensure that those spaces do not come up to a point where they can fund certain leaders we love to make sure that the education doesn't go down, the skills institutions get destroyed, the funding is not available, unless if it's been given to a face black person who serves their agenda. So Africa becomes that for the rest of the world. The DRC is arguably the wealthiest nation in the world in terms of mineral resources.
Yeah.
Cobalt, coltan, the minerals that are needed for microchips, that are needed for electric vehicle, or just batteries in general.
Everything that we use that has electricity, yeah.
That becomes a very big one. And it serves everyone who enjoys cheap produce from the DRC for the DRC to remain unstable. This includes mining bosses in South Africa.
Yes.
Which is why it's a conspiracy theory, why the government will send our soldiers to the DRC to go and protect. It's not to deal with the conflict, and it's to ensure that certain interests, It's why there are military bases around South Africa from the US. It's why there's issues with Ukraine and NATO and Russia. As I said, so we'll be called pessimists and cynics, but I think I'm a realist because this information is out there. America is a very big ally of Taiwan, and China wants to take over Taiwan precisely because Taiwan is the biggest manufacturer of microchips in the world, which are basically the future of tech and the future of the world.
And that is what made America, America.
Yeah. So, anyways, that will be my answer on the DRC. That, the DRC is sad, and it's not just the DRC, it's Sudan, very much as well, also constantly in conflict. There are rumors. I hope I don't get in trouble.
Yes, I know about
rumors that Paul Kagame of Rwanda, who was our poster boy president on the continent, might be a proxy for American interests. Some of his soldiers are there in the DRC. There are rumors now.
But even our soldiers are in the DRC.
No, of course. That's what I'm saying. Some
even
of our
American
guys,
soldiers, I think, are also there.
Some of our guys are proxies for certain agendas.
I don't think the word proxy serves well, because I think you. Being a proxy is different because you can, I would say they're part of the cult. Because I think when you say proxy, you sort of make it seem like these are people that believe in good, right?
No, it just means they sent. That's all. They represent someone.
But they in themselves had that issue. Because my problem with what you're saying is that we are so quick to say proxy, and we take away from the fact that every human being has got a decision that they can make, that they see what is going on, that you stop being a proxy and you start being a participant in that evil.
No, they're definitely participants. Look, what I mean by proxy is you have a board seat in some company.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, you can't attend. So then you send someone to go represent you.
Yes.
But the bottom line is it's not their board seat, it's yours.
It's yours, yeah.
So you'll maybe pay them for their services and they'll appreciate it, but it is not their agenda they are serving, it's yours.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. You look at the president of South Africa, you look at some of these billionaires that we have, black and white, whoever. You may find that they make decisions, they're involved, they sit at the tables, they get all the whatever, but you may find that someone ensured that they sit there.
Of course.
And whatever they do there, it's not their desire. Mm-hmm. Because anytime they deviate from the agenda, they get punished in various ways.
Of course.
They get taken out, they get defunded, someone else comes in, there's a coup, and. So that's what I mean by proxy. Not that they are innocent, not that they're good, not that they have no choice. Just that they serve a bigger agenda.
Kamala Harris, Donald Trump?
What about them? They're
Which
so
side are
great.
you on?
I'm so sad that Kamala Harris lost. I love female leaders. They are the greatest.
Okay.
And the world needs more female leaders.
You were for Kamala?
No, I'm kidding, man. I'm sorry. And I'm not a misogynist.
I was very surprised.
I just want to close off, man, on the African thing, because it's actually important. We need more, and this is not a black thing. You know, it's very easy to make it a black thing, but there are, shame, there are many ignorant, white, colored, Indian people on the African continent who genuinely believe that some of the people in business, politics, and other spaces that are there are either good or bad. They genuinely believe that. They do not understand that there are global agendas at bay. And if ever, for whatever reason, because it is a jungle, if we ever want Africa to be at the level of the United States, the United Kingdom, China, Russia, all of us are going to have to hold hands and, number one, understand what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with are ruthless lions that have been operating through generations for a long time. And if ever we want to fight against them, we need to be honest about what's happening, about the agendas being served. And then we're going to have to come together and decide what it's going to take. And generally for the African continent, this is not really African unity. It's to say we are going to need weapons at the same level as them, number one. One of the silliest things that happened after apartheid ended was they convinced the ANC government, or maybe they didn't have to convince them, to agree to something called the Pelindaba Treaty. Not just for South Africa, but for the entire African continent, to say that Africa will be a nuclear weapon-free zone. So we said the apartheid Afrikaner government had started building nuclear weapons. And their programs were arguably one of the top in the world in terms of medicine, nuclear weapons, electricity. Half of the Western Cape, I think, is powered by nuclear energy.
Yep.
And they dismantled those weapons before the ANC took over. And not only did they dismantle, they came and they signed, hey, we will be a nuclear weapon-free zone. And we celebrate that when an America has got nuclear weapons, and North Korea, who no one takes for a Popeye, has nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Russia has nuclear weapons. So if Africa wants to be at that level, we need superior weapons. We need to make sure that the price of what we're exporting is at fair value, which could cause a huge conflict, as an example. And then once you can agree on those things, then it's a matter of upskilling your people to make sure that they can compete effectively. And then once that's done, then you go to that last level, which is the darkest level of, now that we're top, who can we go and colonize and oppress and own? Yeah. I don't know if you want to research there, or if you want me to go to Trump and Harris.
So there's a scripture in the Bible that explains what you've just said. And I want to read it, 1 Samuel 13:19. And the reason I want to read it is because I think a lot of times South Africans have been lied to about God to the point where they think peace treaties and all these things are a godly way of doing things, you know? And I think the problem is they don't realize that it's actually not as godly as they would have thought it to be.
Are you going to reference the Bible for
I wanted to, right?
Dark things.
No, it's very important, right?
This is how they push propaganda with the soldiers. 1 Samuel what?
13. Let me see. Okay, cool. Let me see. It's in 1 Samuel 13 verse 19, right? And it says, now there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel. For the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make swords or spears. But all the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen every man's share and his coulter and his axe and his mattock. Yet they had a file for mattocks and for coulters and for forks and for axes and to sharpen their goads. So it came to pass in the day of battle that there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan. But with Saul and Jonathan and his son was they found. And the Bible was talking about a time where there was a war. And it says these guys, the Philistines, had said to Israel to say, hey guys, you guys will not own any weapons. If you guys want to sharpen your weapons, you have to come to us and sharpen the weapon. And the Bible tells us that in the day of war, there was no weapon found. So these guys in the Bible were not wise because they didn't have weapons. If you read, according to God's strategy, having weapons is wisdom. And the problem is the Christianity that has been taught to Africa is love, it's peace. How come we're not reading about this to say there was no smith throughout the whole land of Israel? That only the Philistines, and when you begin to shift like that, the church must get weapons. The church must start to get the funding to get the big weapons, to be able to fight back, right? Because you're not going to tell a billionaire who's telling you, get the COVID jab or else you will not attend your services. Not going to happen. But the moment you have weapons, you say, no, we're having our services. I mean, you think about the Catholic Church, right? Do you think there's any nation that could ever touch the Catholic Church?
I don't know. I was baptized Roman Catholic, by the way.
But anyway, please continue.
Before I left the church.
I just remembered that from what you were saying, to say the weapons conversation has really been, Africa, we've been taught the wrong myth. And people must get me right. I'm not saying weapons for individual use. There's no need. I'm saying as a nation, we must have weapons. Because I think the biggest issues that we see today is the fact that many of our countries we can't defend ourselves.
Yeah. And it's done by design and it works. That's the type of propaganda they probably use with soldiers to tell them that, these are Philistines and they are weapons of mass destruction, and if we are not sent to do the work of the Lord...
Okay, let's not get into that one. Let's get back to the US. Who are you with there in the US?
Yeah, I've made a couple of videos regarding this, and I've sat with different people speaking about it. I generally think politics is a dog show in general. Sorry, I apologize if you're offended. You'll be strong. I think politics and the political systems that we are born into, that we have, are a dog show. Because again, with the people that run the agendas of the world, they serve various agendas, regardless of how you feel. With that being said, I don't think there's much different to a Trump, Harris, Obama, Bush, Biden, whoever you want to bring. I think generally, by and large, they serve the agendas of whoever wants to run power and influence. You can call them America, you can call them the corporates, you can call them the Illuminati, the Rothschilds, whatever you want to call them.
Including Donald Trump?
Yes, I'm including Donald Trump.
Okay, you're saying he's a proxy?
I did not say that. I'm saying the way politics is set up.
Okay.
Anyone who's running for office in a country like America is going to be serving agendas, unfortunately. Look, you've got exceptions, arguably. Nakona, this is arguably. Like Russia, North Korea, and China, where they may not serve capitalist agendas per se, but they may serve other, sort of like religious conflict, where you're serving maybe a god over making money. Russia, China, and North Korea are serving something else. Because if they were serving the capitalist agenda, I mean, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Facebook, they'd all be North Korea living their best lives, trying to make money, making sure that Putin is a friend of the companies and hosting all these things. On the backdrop of that, so what happens is we have this fanfare, Republicans versus Democrats, ANC versus DA, MK versus EFF, and it becomes a party. It's like we're choosing between Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates, and it gets the people going. It's exciting. $14.7 billion was spent on campaigning this time around, and it was a party. It was exciting. Some people were like, we want Trump back, make America great again. Some people were like, no, we want the work of Joe Biden to carry on through Kamala Harris. Some people were like, no, we're going to have our first female president. Hillary Clinton missed it. This is our chance. We've had a non-white president in Barack Obama. We're now going to have a female version being, I think, what's called African Asian in Kamala Harris.
African Indian, I think.
Well, she's got Indian descent, so they put that under Asia. So they call her African Asian because the African part is also from Jamaica. So they call her African Asian.
Okay.
So there was all of that. And then it almost becomes right-wing, conservative versus left-wing, woke, progressive, pro-reproduction, abortion rights for women, Kamala Harris. No, we must go back to traditional values, Trump. Essentially, it's most of the same. And I say this because in America, in South Africa, there are communities and groups that regardless of who's in power, they will not forsake their values. They will carry on doing the things they do. If they choose to be homophobic, if they choose to say their woman will dress up in a certain way, if they choose to worship on this date, they will carry on doing things the way they do. If they believe in guns, they will get guns. The government of the day, more than anything, is managing the tax purse, managing social welfare, and then ensuring that the business interests that funded them have a smoother way of running the way they operate more than anything. Now, Trump comes into office and I'm a fan of Trump. Why am I a fan of Trump? Not necessarily because, I think Harris is going to destroy the world. I just find that he's a bit more authentic. He's a bit more honest. I'm not the type of person that likes being sold on bullshit. I prefer if you're going to screw me, tell me how you're going to screw me so that I can choose to be screwed or not. We had the recent protest of Orania members or citizens, AfriForum, Solidariteit, DA, PA, Freedom Front Plus,
yes,
against the Bella Bill. I'm not naive. Someone can come and talk bullshit and lie. I'm not naive about the agendas that they're serving. White Afrikaners have never apologized for apartheid. If they could vote tomorrow should we bring apartheid back? They'd be like, oh, thank you so much. They are not lying, most of them at least, about what they want for this country. They're not for the rainbow nation. They're not, oh, we need more black kids. They're not. They're like, we're here for Afrikaans people. We're here for our kids. We're here for our neighborhoods. They just can't say white because they know it triggers like potential hate speech and the Human Rights Council. But they're there for their agenda. So you can sit with an Afrikaans person and be like, I know what you're about. You're about your culture, your people. You love rugby and biltong and prize. That's what you're about. The next person who's like, no, I believe in the rainbow nation and unity and diversity in action. We need more female. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. We have got an undocumented foreigners issue. We've got a high unemployment issue. We've got companies that are seeing their bums. We've got foreign companies that come here and make a lot of money. Who are you serving? You're going to go take money from the West for so-called renewables, and then you're going to go on a platform and say, Russia is our ally. You're going to visit BRICS, and then you're going to go sit with King Charles. I don't know
where you stand.
I don't know where it's going. So, again, I'm not naive to think that Trump hates all the people that love Kamala. I'm not naive to believe that for a second. I believe he can get along with many of those people as and when it's needed. But I think it's a bit more authentic in stating certain things like we've got young Americans dying because there are certain companies that are just making money off this thing. And that's not cool. China's eating us for breakfast. We've exported so many of our jobs to China. It was cool when we were getting cheap labor in China and we just get to have the head office in America and we're rich. It was cool when we were getting cheap resources from the DRC and it's not cool anymore because at some point someone became so smart and they were like, oh, we're going to monopolize the space and we're going to start arm wrestling with you. So it's like, no, we don't like what China's doing. We want to make America great. We want to bring back jobs. And that sounds more real. Now, making America great probably comes at the inconvenience and prejudice of other nations. But I understand. I'm like, I know where this guy stands. He's not pretending like he loves Africa. He calls Africa a shithole. I get it. And I understand why. He sounds more real. It's a fanfare, it's a show, but I choose the guy who sounds less of a bullshitter than the other person. And when Trump won, I was happy. But at the end of the day, it's all a game. Similar to our politics in this country. It's all a game. Even if Jacob Zuma and the MK won the elections and they decided to go into the coalition with the EFF, I fundamentally do not think that things were going to change aggressively. And if they did, this is where you see the proxy argument. If they did, we were going to be sanctioned tomorrow by the people that you didn't know exist. You'd see no internet. You'd see electricity all of a sudden. You'd see all these weird things happening and you'll realize, oh, snap. So if we don't play ball, all of a sudden we don't have electricity. All of a sudden we don't have internet. All of a sudden I can't buy a Big Mac. All of a sudden I can't import Jordans. But we voted. It's democracy. Don't you guys like democracy? And it's like, no, we don't. We like democracy that serves us. And if your so-called democracy doesn't serve us, we'll send the UN peace troops to come and make sure that there's stability in your country.
Okay. But Pen, you sound like somebody who's saying there's nothing citizens can do, that the global elite will just rule over them and they must just sit down and accept it.
As a collective, yes, there's nothing they can do. But for the elite to exist, it took a few people to be like, I want something more. You and I have the ability to get to the highest levels of the world if we're willing to play the game the way it gets played and to do the things that others are not willing to do. And then once you get there, you can then start sculpting the world according to your worldview, whatever it may be, and lobby enough people and convince enough people and bomb enough countries to force your way. But ordinary citizens, through things like a ballot, through things like where they buy from, it's like sending your child to a school with 3 sporting codes and telling them they're free will. They don't. Telling us, no, but I choose to buy. You're not. So, no, citizens can't really choose. Specifically the type of, like I said, political systems and governance systems we have in the world. Something as silly as countries. People may not know. Countries are made up. They're not real. If you do believe in God, or at least the Christian God, you believe in the world. And the whole world is ours. So who came and sat and decided that from here to here, you can only exist here? And if you want to exist elsewhere, you need to jump through these loophole, these
Borders.
jump through the borders, jump through these hula hoops, if it were, to get a visa or citizenship. And you're gonna kill another nation because I'm South African and he's Zimbabwean. Those are human created things, and we've bought into them, and we accept them as they are. So at any given time, they flex. And I think the pandemic era was the greatest reminder as a social experiment of how powerless and weak and useless we are, where global laws were suspended. Just with a few, look, no one was actually killed. No one was put in jail. Just a few threats, just a little bit of language. Oh, people are dying. Look at the numbers. And people start, please stay at home. And we move.
Lives were destroyed.
And we're done. Yeah.
You know, my concern is that I want to agree with you, but I believe that there is a generation that's coming up. And I believe that they're different. The one thing that I've always realized is that Hitler cannot rule forever. There will be a Hitler, but there will be the next generation that will do things differently. And I think there is a generation that's coming up that's seeing these things, that understands these things, that's hearing, because what you're saying, I completely agree with, 100%. But I think where it's hurting me is where you're saying the only way you can change it is by getting there. Because the problem is that the moment you get there, you're in their system.
Yes.
You're in their cult.
Yes.
You've learned from them.
Yes. That's what it takes.
But I'm saying that's not what it takes. I'm saying there's another generation that's different.
What does your promised land look like?
I think my promised land firstly looks like, that's such a deep question.
I know.
But basic income for everybody.
Basic income?
Yeah.
Coming from where?
From government. I don't believe.
Okay, let me not challenge you. Please finish.
No, but feel free.
Please finish. No, please finish.
Yeah, I don't believe that we have a scarcity issue in this world. I believe we have enough for everybody to survive. So I believe basic income for everybody. That means a house. It means Dubai sort of format. You've got a house, you've got food on the table. Basic. Beyond that, then we bring in capitalism. So capitalism starts where everybody has a home, and I'm not talking about mansions, just a place to stay and food. Then capitalism begins. And then capitalism is seen as you have a car. Capitalism, because remember, capitalism in this country, we've got over 5 million people, stats say, that live in shacks. So there's no way that we can say we have all these billionaires and then there are people still in shacks, And also it's very disingenuous for people to believe that people stay in shacks because they want to stay in shacks, I recently saw this TikTok trend where young kids that were living in shacks were sort of dressing up and, going to work every morning. And a lot of people were commenting and saying, wow, we're inspired. And I said, we must be very careful as Black people to fall into that trap, because that's the trap they want us to believe, that there isn't enough. Melo sebenze to have a shelter, right? Which is not true. There is enough for you to have a shelter. You must work to get a car. Yeah, maybe a car. Maybe we can start there. But a house is built with soil that's on the ground.
Sure.
Bricks are made from soil, sand that's in your backyard, And I think that's where it starts. And I said to somebody the other day that thatch roof for me, that's enough. If maybe we said, okay, we can't build, let's rather do thatch roof, but let's make sure everybody's got a home and food. That's the basic. Then the rest, we can talk about capitalism.
Your promised land is a global Dubai.
Not a Dubai, no. No, I have issues with Dubai. My promised land is similar to America.
Is your promised land global or local? Maybe that's the other place where we're not finding each other.
I mean, you've said such a deep thing to say Christians believe that the world is theirs, right? And I'm Christian.
Well, not Christians. I'm saying if you have a God, generally,
you believe that He gave
your God doesn't say, well, hey, maybe the Jews could say otherwise. But God doesn't say, hey, you exist here. The rest of the world is not yours. It belongs to other people.
Yeah.
The understanding is that if you believe in a God, in a maker, in a creator, the whole world is ours to enjoy. Like a bird. A bird can fly anywhere it wants.
Yeah.
So human beings should be able to go anywhere they want freely. So I was just asking, is your promised land local or global?
To be honest, it's global.
And Dubai is the benchmark. Yes, maybe not in detail, but it's the benchmark.
Not Dubai, America.
Where will America's worse? Where will the money come from?
The money is there. Remember, money is printed.
Money is printed in America.
Yeah.
but only if other countries are poorer. There must be a relative.
No, I think that's where I don't buy into it. So
Who's going to work?
But here's my theory, right?
Okay.
Billionaires are hoarding cash,
That is true.
right? Lots of cash.
That is true.
That could build everybody in this world a home and free food.
But then
Right.
who's gonna be their servant?
Forever. Hold on. Forever.
Okay.
Oh, you asked a good question. Who's gonna be? That's where the problem lies. Yeah.
Yeah,
What-
but who's gonna serve them?
Yeah.
So I was hoping you'd say Dubai is the template and the
I have
benchmark.
a couple of issues with Dubai.
So in Dubai, the Emiratis generally don't necessarily have to work. So because of that, they have to import labor
Yeah.
from places like India, Nepal, etc.
Yeah.
Poor areas.
Mm.
A big chunk of their wealth comes from oil. They're obviously diversifying now, but that oil is incumbent on the rest of the world buying it at a premium so they can live well, so they can pay the immigrants and everyone else. When you have fair, maybe example's an easy example. You've got social welfare where a black South African, or let me rather say a poor South African, can get a free house, to what you were saying, free house. Their children can study for free and even eat there. They can study for free at tertiary level. And then maybe not be a lot, but they can get a small grant later on for the rest of their lives until it bumps up when they get to pension age. But those South Africans now don't want to work the labor that is running certain big companies. And that's where illegal undocumented immigrants come in to serve this, because for any developed nation, for any first world nation, there needs to be slave labor. It could be Mexicans, could be African slaves. It could be in Russia, they have the stans that they import labor from. It can be oppressing your own people, exploiting your own people like North Korea and China. So I don't understand. And this is one of the debates I have with a lot of my mates who are very pro-capitalism, because they say it's not a zero-sum game. I'm like, you can never convince me otherwise. You cannot be well off and comfortable and free in a money system unless someone else is in bondage elsewhere. If you're speaking abundance, it means we're all working, we're all hunting, we're all planting, we're all picking from the trees. But once you bring the money system in, it can never be that we'll all be okay. No one will work and it will fall to shit. So I'm sorry for challenging your worldview.
No, I love it, and I'm resonating because there's a scripture in the Bible where Jesus says, "The poor you will have with you always."
The poor. So what happens with the worldview, and this is where it becomes better, is where you narrow down on your target audience. If your target audience is South Africans, we can become Dubai. We have the minerals.
Yeah.
You get buy-in from white people, colors, whatever, that look, we'll import Zimbabweans and people from Malawi and Mozambique to serve all of us. But every black home is going to be a 3-bedroom home. We're going to have servants and we're going to export to the rest of the world at a premium. And every other family will have a game farm, and all these tourists will come in and spend dollars and pounds and euros and yen to come and leave money here. But we need to be exploiting others. It cannot be. I mean, the whole rise of the Chinese, as cute as it is, came on the back of exploiting their own labor. We speak sweatshops. It came of bad famine, drought, and people dying under Mao Zedong. It came onto Hong Kong's counterfeits, them flooding the world so that we can give them currency. And then some of the companies bringing their manufacturing plants, etc. there. And once they started making a profit, it's like a Pakistani spaza shop. Once we've got all the money from eNCA, we can now start flexing, where we're now borrowing money from to people in the townships. China now starts borrowing, I think $800 billion, if I'm not mistaken, to the US. Now you become our bitch. Now we can start flexing and speaking a different language, but it comes at a very, very high cost. And either the cost is going to be your own people forcing black people to get into taxis so that black people can make money in taxis, versus having Pakistanis and Somalians and Ethiopians own the taxis. If you were to force black people with a whip, with guns, to buy from black-owned spaza shops, black people would own spaza shops. If you don't do that and you allow anyone from anywhere in the world to come in, all of a sudden you're fucked. At some point, I had a dream and a worldview of also improving on the world. And my benchmark was the Jewish community, the South African Muslim community. And I realized maybe Israel is a bad example, but let's say maybe the Muslim communities in the rest of the world, India, Middle East, etc. We cannot all be rich. It can only be a small group. And this is arguably my conspiracy theory. It's one of the reasons I think the Jewish community keeps themselves so small. Because we can't be wealthy as Jews if there's a lot of us. I think they 18 million or less in the world. They are comparable to the Zulus. Zulus and Jews almost have the same number, except Jews make money across the whole world, which then comes into this community, stays within the community. They obviously tithe to Israel as their motherland, but that's how they remain rich. If they open the gates, same with the Muslims in South Africa, if they open the gates and they're no longer running the stores and the supply and they cannot have this wealth that we dream of. So I think if you have a worldview, which is the arm wrestle that the guys at the top have, Russia, Soviet Union, why we had the world wars even, why we have BRICS, these are the people that I want to uplift. And if it comes at the cost of those people, it's okay, because those are not my people. I'm going to work for these people. And if that's your worldview, it could work. But if the worldview is that everyone, shame. Shame.
I have no response because I want us to move to our next topic.
You didn't want to say anything on Harris and Trump yourself?
I mean,
who are you supporting?
Trump.
Why?
I think Trump is the only person who stood up against a lot of the billionaire elites that wanted to control the world.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that is enough of a war to fight.
He's not alone.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of billionaires like him that support him.
Yeah.
But for me, this is where now it becomes, people love Jacob Zuma. Kontoesi is where RET and the ANC. And my whole thing is, yes, they may not like white monopoly capital. They may not like the West, but someone needs to be served. There's going to be rich black millionaires, billionaires. Russia's going to come and supply here. China's going to come and supply India. It's going to look different. It's going to shift. But I believe the hierarchies and everything else would largely remain the same. But if you prefer Christo Visa, Johann Rupert, Nicky Oppenheimer, Yanni Mouton being, Koos Baker being black, and you're like, I'd rather that, even though they operate exactly the same. Aliko Dangote doesn't pay higher salaries than Christo Visa. Oprah Winfrey doesn't pay higher salaries than the next. Tyler Perry is not paying 5 times the salaries of other Hollywood. He's not. He's just black. And if that makes you happy, then by all means support this.
Okay. I hear you. But maybe just to leave a note there, representation matters. And I think for me, my problem has always been, why is it that the top 100 richest people in the world all have the same skin tone?
Then you should support Kamala Harris if you believe in representation.
My problem with supporting Kamala Harris for me was the fact that I felt that she was on the side of the billionaire elites. If you looked at the people that were funding her, she was heavily funded by Apple. So voting for Kamala, DRC, that's not going to change.
But it wouldn't change under Trump either.
Oh, I think there will be a couple of differences under Trump. I think there will be. If you look at the way Elon Musk is moving, and I really hope he doesn't disappoint me. I always say to people that Elon Musk is one of those people that you look at and you're like, you could really impress us, but just like, don't screw this thing up. If you look at the way Elon Musk is moving, he's moving to believe that the world should be decentralized. Twitter. Let's allow creators to get paid. By the way, how many years did Twitter run without paying creators? The moment the man gets within a whole month, he's like, pay creators. That's somebody who's saying, these people have got expenses. I'm thinking about them. Pay them. Twitter's been existing for
You think he's doing it out of the goodness of his heart and not competing with other platforms that are paying?
Look, whether he's competing or not, it's a good thing because people are being paid.
Okay.
Right? My argument
The motive doesn't matter. Just what looks good at surface level.
Look, the motive does matter because what I judge you on is what you're doing good for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And creators have been creating for many years on Twitter. People created Twitter. They haven't been paid a
Facebook.
cent. Yeah. They've never been
Facebook
paid
is the one that makes me the angriest because that was my first social media drug.
So here you are, Elon Musk gets in and the first thing he says, get rid of all these people that are saying these things can't be done, the negative people. Let's pay creators.
Sure. It was really dope. Shout out to Elon Musk for that.
And I remember people coming through, hey, we're getting paid on Twitter, paid on Twitter. And I thought, this is the right thing to do. But here's the second part that I think is quite important. Elon Musk has an idea on how to move humanity forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part where I'm just like, don't screw this thing up. Starlink, robo-taxi, going to Mars, Twitter turning it into an everything platform. All these ideas are pro-human development.
You don't think his competitors are also pro?
Not all of them.
Or could argue pro?
Not all of them. I'm not an Elon Musk advocate, so but I do think that it's what you are saying to say you have to get into that cult. And once you're in, you can then change it. So I do believe in what you were saying, where you were saying, look, he's doing electric vehicles, he needs the battery. So of course he's definitely getting stuff from Congo and everywhere else. But I do think the man is different from those he found there. And for me, there's a story of Elon Musk's daughter telling him that she's not going to come to his house because it's a mansion, And the man moves out of the mansion, and she explains to say, how I live in a mansion when there's poor people in California. She goes on a whole rant. The man moves from the mansion to a smaller house to accommodate his daughter, and he says, look, I'm going to be doing these things because my daughter. These are the signs.
This is not the daughter who was angry that he was supporting Trump. You don't know?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Okay,
I don't know about that. And for me, I just feel that for me, it's high time that we deal with these billionaire elites. Because for how long must it continue, And maybe let's delve into the media space, right? You look at South Africans and the way South Africans are brilliant in media and everything South Africans do in terms of media, right? Yet South Africans in the media space are still abused on a daily basis. Netflix comes to South Africa, it only works with white production companies.
Right? Is this a real thing?
It's a real thing.
Okay.
It's producing shows for black people with black actors, but majority of the money is going to white production companies. Are you telling me that there are no black production companies that are capable, that are able? Why aren't you developing? Why aren't you having the conversations? Why is there no office here? Why? All these questions, right? Whereas you find a man like Elon Musk, the moment he gets into Twitter, he's paying everybody, including Africans. TikTok, you've been alive for all these years, you're paying everybody, but Africans are not being paid. So that's where I'm a little bit different, where I'm like, no, man, we must judge these guys based on what we can see. Elon bought Twitter, and the first thing he does, let's compensate the people that are creating content. For me, that's amazing. Start Starlink. Let's give Africa Starlink.
I'll tell you what's important in what you're saying to me, because I've painted this whole picture of the global elites and how they operate. For the individual and his family and his community who are like, I will go with that person because I feel there's a greater upside for me and my family. I cannot fault that. If the argument is the West versus BRICS, if the argument is black versus white, but not much is changing, but the person says, a billionaire, Eric Sampson, doesn't benefit me as much as a billionaire Mpho Dagada. I have a greater chance of actually making more money if this guy becomes rich. They might operate exactly the same, but I think I have a greater chance of doing better with this guy rich. This is what you're saying about representation versus the other person. And if you feel people like Elon Musk, Trump open up more of an opportunity, depending on how you move, then those become the people you support. Other people, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, they obviously roped in people like Beyonce, etc. We're thinking if Kamala Harris wins, there are going to be more black women being highlighted, being profiled, and if you feel that's what's going to serve you and that's what works, I cannot fault you. I just always worry that a lot of it, and this is why I don't like how these things move, a lot of it is very performance. I still choose a side, by the way. I still choose sides even with the performance, but I'm not naive to not think that they operate largely the same. Where I've struggled personally is we speak good English. We're into decent schools. So it's meant to be that we're meant to go and get into and thrive in these status quo spaces. White people love you. Rich white people love you. Oh, so amazing. Speak so well, whatever.
Oh, yeah,
we're meant to be there.
Don't love me, but okay.
And you're meant to be a custodian for them, because the other side is, Zuma's so corrupt. These people are incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. They're not even educated. You're like, hey, I studied very hard, bro. It doesn't make sense for this corrupt school dropout to be in charge. Because if he comes in, I won't make it. I'm a clever black. So that not clever blacks, I want to be like, you're not going to come in and we're going to lose out. Whereas this really nice white person is like, no, you can be very comfortable. Your kids can come in here, can be part of the club, etc. I struggle with accepting who I've been groomed to be, because I see and I understand the other side. I'm like, this is bullshit. And one of the things I try to argue to minority capital is, you do realize most of your problems are caused by yourself. The reason we have high crime is because you guys continue hiring illegal immigrants. You keep dodging tax. You keep hoarding the money. And you don't understand why these people, what do you want them to do? You want them to be poor and to die of hunger and to not have nice things? They are desperate. You're not giving them jobs. You've made sure that your political friends destroy quality education because you're scared of the competition, of them rising up and competing with you. But you've now created criminals who are desperate, who are hijacking you, who become so mentally messed up, they have to live on drugs and nyaupe. And when a person's at that level, he's not human anymore. So when he comes to hijack you and he ends up violating your wife, he ends up stabbing you and cutting your head off, it's not because he's some weird monster. It's because you created this. And I'm saying, rich white people, please let in some dumb, undereducated black people, because if you don't, they will become monsters and they will eat you tomorrow. And Julius Malema said this in an interview. They're going to eat me as well, because now I'm also living in Hyde Park. I'm going to be a sellout to them. So can we try and accommodate some of these guys so that we don't have to unnecessarily pay high insurance and we can focus on what we need to focus on, which is competing with the world. It's what I think Rassie Erasmus gets right at the Springboks. I can be racist. Maybe I'm racist and keep out all these black kids. But tomorrow, if something shifts, if the world changes, and I want Siya Kolisi to protect me, he will have been kept out of the system. He wouldn't have gone to a nice school. He won't be living a comfortable life. He's going to be the first person who's going to be wielding a panga to come chop my head off with my kids because I didn't give him an opportunity to not only be involved, but to actually be one of the people that when the rest of the world comes to fight us, it's like, don't touch Rachel, don't touch Rassie, don't touch Peter Stiff. These are my people. And you're like, thank you. And if you could get rich white people and some new rich black people who are also there holding some of the money to understand the importance of that, we can have, at least from a South African perspective, a much better country. Then we can speak about how we are oppressing the rest of the continent. And we can speak about how we're moving like colonizers. But at least we will be okay.
I agree with you 100%. It's such a shame that these conversations are the conversations that they should be a part of.
Yeah. Well, we're trying. And then we get called sellouts. We try to have these conversations with the Belungus and with the Mapunus. And then the same black people you're trying to help call you fucking names. And then you end up being pissed off. And if ever later on in life you're that frustrated that your child is violated, you get hijacked, someone close to you gets murdered, it doesn't take much to cross over to the other side. And you're like, send me. I'll be a proxy. Tuma mina. Mabekula, some of them. Tuma mina, and I'll go fucking do the things that need to be done. Because I've seen what these same people have done to me and my family and my community.
But you know, I have this perspective and I've always tried to check myself because I'm like, I don't know if a white counterpart has the same, right? It's the story of the underdog, right? David and Goliath, to say the black people have so much potential. They had to keep them under because if they didn't, they'd be ruling over them.
Correct.
Right. And I still think it's the same thing. I always say, give a black child the same opportunities as a white child and you'll see they'll excel. I remember saying to a friend of mine, I said, I don't know many white children that can compete with me in any industry that I have been to, right? Even to a point where when I look at them and they've got the funding, etc., I still think, the inferiority is still there, right? Which makes me believe that, and as I'm saying, it needs to be checked, right? That it's inherent in them. They've seen this thing to say, these black people have money. They will be the most powerful. They will be the richest. They will.
Correct.
Know? And immediately they come and say, don't allow it. Don't.
And they're right to do that.
Look at Oprah. Oprah goes into a white-dominated country and becomes the biggest television star as a black woman.
Yes.
Without the white family, funded family, etc. and builds this empire that everybody listens to and everybody wants to be a part of, right? Look at T.D. Jakes, whether you're religious or not. Look at Tyler Perry. Goes into Hollywood and says, no, I'm not going to do this. Builds his own Hollywood.
Yeah.
And becomes this guy. And everybody's like, look at the sports stars, the black sports stars, your LeBron James. And look at how they maneuver in these spaces. Beyonce, Michael Jackson, to say, look at Tyler. Just a person from South Africa, taken to the US.
Colored person.
Becomes colored person.
There we go.
Becomes number one, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that they've seen that. And that's the way I look at it, to like, oh, it's it's intimidation because they know that should the black man be empowered, he'll take over, and not only take over in all aspects, physically, in every single aspect. And I think then that thing creeps in, and that's the evil that I say that they sort of manifest, where they say, don't allow them. And that's why they came up with these words like kafir and all these words, because to them it was like an inherent evil thing of like intimidation. How do we make sure that you never get what, and it's like,
no, their concerns are very valid. And you're very right. The black child generally is extremely talented and has a lot of potential. The greatest wealth we have on the African continent, which the world might know and is pretending like they don't, is actually our people, more than the resources and the weather and those things. But they're also right in terms of what they've done to protect and preserve their minority wealth. And I say this in the context of, you're speaking about yourself, Oprah, Tyler Perry, Tyler, many other examples. LeBron James, I don't know if I mentioned him, TD Jakes. This is first generation coming from humble beginnings. Give it 3, 4, 5 generations of privilege. Black people. And I see it now, second generation black, or first generation rather, after coming out of the village or the township. Those kids are useless. Those kids are pathetic. And what happens, this is now the question for you. What happens 5 generations from now where yourself, your family, your community has built this wealth that you founded, self-made, and now there's other communities, we'll call them Nigerian, Zimbabwean, Somalian, they come from poverty, humble beginnings, who are coming in and have the potential to come and fucking steamroll you and your entire family and your community. Do you give them a shot because you believe in meritocracy and your kids are going to now become servants to them? Or do you build the systems to ensure that your kids are going to be fine? A trust fund, making sure they go to good schools, make sure that these other people that are immigrants and they don't have citizenship are kept out. Would you? Because this is where I understand white people and some black people don't, or most black people don't. I'm like, I understand you. But I'm also like, we also have an opportunity here. Would you be willing to open that door? Because that's what we're asking white people to do. They colonized us, they oppressed us, they exploited us, they built this wealth. It's brilliant. Now their kids are pathetic. You and I can say this. We've seen them, our peers, they're weak. Yeah. It's okay, shame. But now you're asking their grandfather, great-grandfather, who was the immigrants that came from Germany, that came from Lebanon, that came from and built whatever Abu Sol Kersner and these guys built. And now you're telling them that, no, move your child out of the way. Your child must become my maid, my gardener. Do you really think they should do that? And would you be willing to do that?
It's an interesting question that you ask, because now I'm putting myself in that situation. Yeah. But let me say this, right? Black people are not like that. Hold on. Let me give context, right?
Sure.
I once said to somebody that the reason why we have illegal foreigners in this country, right, so many of them, is because it is South Africans that are practicing Ubuntu. This is an illegal foreigner, and a South African is saying, this person is staying here, right? And I think we have that Ubuntu to say, you can come here as a Zimbabwean or Mozambican, you can work, you can grow your wealth, right? But the issue is that at the bottom, that's where a lot of people are saying, but hold on, you guys are practicing Ubuntu, but we're suffering, right? But I think inherently, black people have that Ubuntu thing, which I don't think the other side has.
I disagree aggressively with you. I think we're exactly the same. And you're speaking from a reference point of black South Africans not having much. And even with that not having much, they still have xenophobic tendencies at times with poorer people than them, because they feel like you guys are stealing our jobs and all these pop little crumb jobs that black people are squabbling over. I'm speaking, many black families I've met that are comfortable, whether it's through a job, through a business, through tenders, just their children. Never mind 4 or 5 generations, just their children are pathetic. And I'm telling you now, those parents will do whatever it takes to ensure that Mpho Dagada and his dust is not coming in to disrupt my little son and his little company. Some of our politicians, by the way, you can use them as examples. People can look at some of our black politicians and look at the quality of the children that they have and what their children have maybe been able to achieve versus the next generation of politicians, the strongest ones, don't come from those families. They actually come from the streets. And those young generation politicians that we speak about, they're going to become their kids are going to get steamrolled again. The immigrant mindset is not a uniquely South African phenomenon. It happens in America. The guys that
Kamala Harris is an immigrant.
Kamala Harris's family, the guys that built Google, I think, were first generation American. Their parents were immigrants. Some of the families in this country, the guys that built Telegram, etc., etc. Like, even in places like China, Jack Ma is not from a prominent family, even though he's kind of disappeared and the Chinese have muzzled him. But the immigrant, hey, Baba, his story is Jack Ma. One day we'll podcast in China and we'll tell you.
Yeah.
But the immigrant mindset, wherever you go, is the reason why Trevor Noah, Tyler, you'd say white people don't have Ubuntu, but why does Black Coffee make money abroad? Why does Euphonic and Shimza? It's because they actually if you have a skill and something of value, we will support you, bro. Tyler Perry will come from dirt. They will let him in. It's the nature of how the system has been set up. But I'm telling you, once Tyler Perry has privilege, the idea of him shifting his child aside and saying, no, you're not as talented, we'll use this person just out of goodness, even though this person might come and steamroll Tyler Perry Studios and put Penuel Studios, it will not happen. It won't happen. If they let someone in, it's because they can benefit from them. They can make the money, a siakolis, etc. But they'll pay you up with their children. They'll be like, hey, okay, you must marry my son, my daughter, because we want to keep it here within the family.
I think that one of the most brilliant things that you do, Penuel, is that when you debate, you have this humble perspective that it's so difficult to argue against.
Maybe not humble. I try to give a perspective that people can understand.
But let me explain the humble, right? You remove pride from your argument, and it's very difficult to come against an argument that's not filled with pride, right? Because arguments are about egos, right?
Normally,
yeah. So what I'm saying is, when you argue, there's no ego sentiment. It's just, here is the facts of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting an ego to it. It's very difficult to debate against that. It's just an observation I made.
Thank you.
But what I want to say is, I agree with you, but it's reminding me of something I heard from another gentleman who said, if you live life believing that your skin color and your cultural group mean something to you, he then says you live a very limited life.
That's correct.
Right? And he then says he believes he's a spiritual being. He has no culture. And the man's Nigerian, right? And he says, I'll never speak like a Nigerian. I'll never dress like a Nigerian. And he doesn't wear the Nigerian outfits, right? And I think he's a billionaire. And I looked at him and I thought, okay, this is interesting. But hearing what you're saying, it's as though you're saying to me that culture, ethnicity might be a zero-sum game.
It is. It's a battle of worldviews. It's, I think I'm better. I think my people are better. If you think you're better, then you rise on your own. And then you assimilate to a winning culture. You convert to Judaism. You maybe marry a white woman. You start speaking a good handle of English. You start speaking Afrikaans, speak French, and you get in because you think you're brilliant.
So you think culture is a construct?
If you think your community is brilliant, then you try and uplift as many, and then you try and steamroll others as much as possible, and then you see how far you get. And it's literally as simple as that. I mean, you're not Christian. No, let me not go there.
No.
Let me say this.
Go there.
Let me not say this. Let me say religion outside of, let's say, just culture. Because culture, people might understand it in South African context. There's Zulu, you're Pedi. No. Religion, as an example, has been one of the greatest battles of worldviews, where some people believe, no, we think this is the way that things should be done, and others feel a different way, and they end up fighting. And in the way they spread, you realize that it's just we will co-opt you into our worldview. We'll either do it through violence, through love. We'll feed you a soup kitchen. We'll give you a nice English name like Samuel, etc. And you'll be like, the greatest privileges I've experienced in my life. I used to get fed at church. First time I went overseas was through the church. The people that funded my scholarship, the people that gave me jobs, access to business, were people like, how do you expect me to hate this thing? So if being Nigerian is the coolest thing, and Dangote and whoever else believes it's the thing, and they send it everywhere. Now we've got Abo Jolofina, those that are like, I want my kids to be 2 meters tall and freaks. I love Afro beats. I love what was it called? The Niger movies, Africa Magic.
Yeah, Africa
I love
Magic,
Africa Magic. Nigerians are so cool. They've got swag. You've got Davido. You've got Burna Boy. If that becomes the thing, something similar happened. By the way, it's just said that they don't have money. Something similar happened with the Rastafarian culture and the Jamaicans, where everyone thought it was cool to have dreads and hey, Jaman. You co-opt that and that becomes the thing, and then people want to assimilate into that culture. Religion, it's because you feel it works, it benefits you. And then you become an ambassador and a custodian and a gatekeeper for the privilege that those spaces have. But it's a constant battle. And anyone who doesn't think it is either naive or they pushing their agenda.
So you don't believe in the if you're Zulu, you need to slaughter a lamb. You don't believe in all those constructs, the cultural construct.
Slaughter a goat before the Zulus.
Oh, a goat
come for you. A goat. So, like the person you referenced, I believe I'm a spiritual being.
So you don't have any physical connotations. Do you believe people that do believe in the physical cultural stuff are a bit inferior in thinking?
Not in the slightest.
No, but I'm saying even inherently in yourself, do you see it as like, he believes in a goat, I know my spiritual being works. Do you see it like that? And I'm not saying you're judging them, but I'm saying inherently.
Look, inherently I go around saying I'm God. So I think maybe that should answer that question. I believe I'm the beginning and the end, at least in my life. And everything that I see is a manifestation of myself. My belief system is premised on consciousness. It's premised on everything that exists because you exist. Therefore, you are the God. And if you believe there is another God within your manifestation, so be it. You can believe in Allah, Christian God, the God of the Jews. You can believe in Buddha. It doesn't matter.
And when you confront a situation, what do you do? Where do you get the answer from? Cancer.
No, so again, it's a manifestation because all the other people that have their own beliefs.
You manifested the cancer.
No, there was no world before you existed. Nothing. Everything is your. So when you're in a dream and there's a monster chasing you, you created that monster. Like, but why would you create a monster? It's like I could argue similar with every other. I could argue similar with every other belief system that their go-to is normally an external being, but that's as far as their explanation goes. And they are almost fine to keep it there. But when I say, okay, instead of assigning it to that, I assign it to self, you're like, but why would you create cancer? And I'm not allowed to ask, why would your God create cancer? No, but it's not my God. It's like, but your God explained that it's not him. He's shifting responsibility.
That's a good one.
So I'm just saying, like, so it's not an inferior thing more than I have my views, and I fully respect the constructs that human beings have created. And I don't think people that believe in the constructs are inferior. They just play the game there, which if it works for them, great. For me, how I was raised and how I consume the world, it doesn't serve me. So it serves me better to be beyond. It serves Black Coffee better to be an international DJ than a South African one.
But I want you to say it, Penuel, because
you want me to?
I want you to say it.
I'm not gonna say
right?
it. Whatever you want me to say, it's a no.
The reason why I want you to say it is because I want to hear whether you are inherently believing in it, right? A lot of people will let you know, and I've heard a government person say this. They said, I invited them somewhere, and they were a minister or whatever the case is.
Yay.
And then they said to me, I don't go to that place. People there don't wear Louis Vuitton and Gucci, etc. And I looked at them and I said, do you believe that those people are inferior? And they said, well, yeah, I'm extra strong. I am different. I'm extra strong. Right?
Sure.
And I looked at the politician and I judged them for a little while. I was like, how dare you, etc.,
yes.
right? But then I looked at the priest who says, if you smoke cigarette, you're weak, right? And he says, that's a demon controlling you, right? And I said, are you superior to somebody who's succumbing to 2 rand, I want to smoke? Mm-hmm. And he said, of course. That person. And I said, that's what I rather prefer the pastor who's saying to me that guy has a demon because he's addicted to cigarettes. I am inferior because I'm not addicted to cigarettes. I prefer that truth level, right? So that when we go to the guy who's smoking cigarettes, we can say, listen, this pastor's saying you've got a demon because you smoke, and he must answer for himself, and we must hear his truth, right? So I want to hear your truth to say, do you believe that they're inferior? Do you believe that somebody who's slaughtering a goat and saying they're talking to their dead grandmother, do you believe like,
inferior to me?
Yeah. And I'm saying to you, let's deal with you.
Look, I'll say this, right? And yeah, these are the things that end up being sound bites, and it's whack. I believe every being on the planet is inferior to me, whether present or past. Because as I said, I believe I'm God and everything is a manifestation of myself. Be it the Christian God, be it Leonardo da Vinci, be it Kanye West, be it Bill Gates, I believe I created all of them through my consciousness. So they are all inferior to me. So any lower level of slaughtering a cow or, nyakaba and you slice your face, or no, I wear this thing or I wear this hat, or I believe I'm Jewish, or like all of them are just, it's more identifiers. It's more like I'm South African. This is my flag. And these are the things we do. We put our hands on our hearts and we sing the anthem. So it's at that exact same level. I don't look at people that slaughter any differently to soldiers that pledge allegiance to the American flag. I feel it's the same type of, it's an identifier that this is us. This is our crew. This is our gang. This is our tribe. This is our vibe.
Who's your gang then?
So that's what I'm saying. I identified what that guy was saying, that I believe I'm a spiritual being. And to me, my whole life has been a journey of constantly transcending everything. I vibe with some of what the Indian gurus believe in. This maybe Buddha as well, but this whole thing of just being beyond everything, an ultimate spirituality where we are everything and everything is nothing.
You vibe with Jesus.
I love the story of Jesus. I love the character of Jesus, whether it's true or not.
So you are like Jesus in some way or form.
In what sense?
I'm saying Jesus said he was God. He said God lived in him. He believed he was superior to everybody else. Because everything you're describing, I'm just hearing a description of what Jesus believed.
I normally make that reference and I don't like offending people that have strong beliefs because I understand why they have them. And it's not out of disrespect that I say the things that I say. It's my view. I find it funny when Christians judge me, specifically Christians, because we're an 80% Christian country. Obviously, if we're living in a Muslim country, I'd say the same about Muslims or anyone else if I was a defector or I was brave enough and if the country allowed for free speech. I find it weird when Christians judge me and I look at the so-called delusions of grandeur that I have and the wild things I say, and I'm like, the source of your faith is very similar to me. He went around saying the wildest things, hanging with the wildest people.
Yes.
And you guys ended up praising this guy and believing that he is your portal to an eternal life. And when I show similar signs, it's weird that you wouldn't think, everyone says, I want to be Christ-like. And you're like, but you know what Christ was like. And when people behave Christ-like, you're the first to bash them like the people of that time. It's like, this is so ironic and hypocritical. But one of the reasons I admire the Jesus story and one of the reasons I'm such a fan, and I'll put him as arguably the first documented revolutionary and rebel. I'll add people like Tupac. I'll add people like Kanye. I'll add people like Lauryn Hill.
Stick to Jesus.
No, I have to mention these people. I have to mention them. Tupac, Kanye, Lauryn Hill, and many others. Is because these people were strong in their conviction. They were strong in their beliefs. And more than anything, all the people I've mentioned really wanted better for humanity. All of them wanted better for humanity, but they lived in a way that other people felt was going so far off from the script that we're given that they were called various names. Sadly for Jesus, he was taken out. Well, Tupac was taken out, but we don't know by the leaders of the day. But it's very sad. But I love the Jesus story because here's a brave guy that says what he wants, says what he feels, believes in his convictions and is convicted in his beliefs and hangs out with people that other people would be like, oh, why would I hang out with those people? And it's like, I'm here, and he does good work. I can judge Christians, but it's very difficult for me to judge the Jesus character because the guy was dope.
He was.
The guy was very dope in how he moved.
Closest person to him was a prostitute, Mary Magdalene.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So I love the Jesus character, but it's not just him. I love the Prophet Muhammad story. I love the story of Buddha, who let go of material things to go and live the way he lived, to go and find meaning in life. there are many similar heroes, which is why I also can't stick to one, especially be pit one against another. I'm like, you mentioned a guy who we're not meant to mention on platforms, but he was deemed a tyrant at a certain period in the history of Germany. But if you look at...
Do we get banned for mentioning him?
It's one of the things that the algorithms trigger to just listen to what you're saying.
Shocking.
It's not shocking. It makes a lot of sense because there's a community of people in the world that have a huge influence in media in various ways, and they are very protective of their history and what's happened. And because of that, they ensure that they try to, they call it, I think, never again. They've got a term for it. I don't know if it's Hebrew. Never again, because they are aware of something that most Black people aren't aware of, that if you open a small gap of what you call freedom of expression, where people bring hate speech, it can then grow into something where your people end up being gassed in chambers, where your people get oppressed, etc. So they're like, we don't allow that. So we've come up with a term for anyone that speaks up against our people in whatever shape or form. And one of the people that did that in real time and murdered their people in a genocide was this guy. But if you study the guy, you look at how he came into Germany at a time when there was high unemployment that just come from
And
the
what
war,
happened to his family?
and you look at how he helped industrialize Germany to the greatest level. We celebrate Black excellence through a Verpa, which comes from a company which was built off the back of a directive from him. Speaking to another car brand, which is brilliant, Porsche, under Ferdinand Porsche, he was commissioned to be like, please build a car for the people.
I didn't know that.
And the company was named, or at least the car was called the car of the people, the people's car, the people's wagon, the folks wagon. And we have that car today, and it's the biggest car company in the world. And the genesis is from this guy who's meant to be, I'm like, I can learn something from him. I don't have to learn everything, but I can learn something. Hugo Boss became a huge designer, huge company, also supplying weapons to his army. Now, must we hate the guy who supplied weapons to the apartheid government if the material is superior? If the designs are so great?
I didn't know Hugo Boss
Should we not
supplied.
switch on electricity because the apartheid government commissioned Hendrik van der Bijl to set up Eskom, ISCO, arms? Like, no, I hate electricity. It reminds me of apartheid. Switch it off. We're like, no, it works. It serves us. But the bad things we can isolate. So I try to learn the good from almost every human, regardless of how they branded. But then the things that I don't like about them, I then zero down and highlight. Like, I don't wish Kamala Harris would suffer and be depressed, and then I'll celebrate that. I think she has a great role to play. Vice president of the most influential nation on earth, arguably. I think she's done brilliant. And she came that close to Trump. That's a win. But the world works in binary. She lost. Shut up. The Democrats are crying now like children on social media. It's making me want to vomit. And you're like, guys are stupid. That's where the inferior comes in, where I realize most human beings are just stupid. They're controlled by certain agendas, and whichever agenda you feel serves you best, that's the one you write. And you're like, Bakania for life. Makosi. And you're like, that's the core of your existence. You don't like that guy because he supports Sundowns? Really? I'm like, yo, okay, sure. Do your thing, homie.
But I think that would bring in a big difference between you and Jesus, because Jesus was very clear on what he liked and what he didn't like. And I think anybody must be clear on what they like and don't like. I think being on the fence forces you to... It's the same argument I have with people when it comes to political parties, churches, everything, to say, being on the fence, it forces you to be, for lack of a better word, lukewarm. You don't have an impact.
You don't have a spine.
Yeah. You
don't
don't have
impact. No, I definitely don't sit on the fence.
Okay. Oh, so you do? Okay.
No, I told you I prefer Trump. When it came to the elections, I told everyone on social media, and they trolled me afterwards who I was voting for.
So we're still on track with the Jesus one.
But the Jesus one is forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do.
Yeah.
Which is essentially, he was, according to story, he was here for everyone's sins, not just for the people he liked. So I'd like to think to some degree, he was also generally for everyone, even though he did have clear...
You just threw something back right at me. But I wanted to say, that just hit me. I wanted to say to you that God's biggest dream is for everybody to be like his son, Jesus.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that in the Bible?
That's God's
Hectic.
biggest dream. He wants everybody
He wanted
to be like,
everyone to be like Jesus.
yeah.
Well, this is according to Jesus telling people. That God wants you to be like me. Look, my father told me to come and let you guys know that I'm the guy. But I got the riz.
I think any parent would want their child to be an example of what they believe should be best.
Correct.
Right? Which is sacrifice. And I think
the best is sacrifice. Is that what you say?
Yeah, I think that's the best.
The best is, that's an opinion. I just want to let that be known.
Oh, no, it's not
but please continue.
It's not quite an opinion. It's a principle, right?
Yeah, it's your principle, but please continue. I cannot sit here and accept that you're saying the best for your child is sacrifice. And that's a global... I can accept it from you.
But that is the best, though.
Please continue, sir.
Yeah. And I feel like I need to justify it, but should
no
I
problem.
leave it?
It's really up to you.
Okay, let me get into it, right?
Yeah.
If you look at many of the parents that have raised really great children, right, you realize that the biggest thing that they did was sacrifice for those kids, right?
The parents?
Yeah, the parents.
Okay.
You ask a parent, why is that you woke up every morning and went to work? And they'll say to you, I have children. I need to provide. You ask a parent, why is it that you are not a porn star? You know, I'm just saying wild things now. And they'll say, what will my kids think? Right? And you look at all these things, you realize that, okay, sacrifice. God sacrificed Jesus for the world.
Sacrificed?
Jesus for the world.
That's sacrifice.
Yes.
Not himself.
That's
his
the
child.
story. That's
I'm
the
just
story.
asking. I'm just asking.
Yes.
That falls under sacrifice for me. If I send my kids to be child laborers in a mine, I'm like, I sacrificed my kids. That holds.
Okay, hold on.
I'm sorry. I was just asking.
You're spinning it completely around.
Please continue, sir. My apologies.
If you
I just don't like the narrative of saying I sacrificed my son, because you are coming from parents sacrificing themselves.
No. The problem with your mine idea, and please, you don't have to, like, we can go. I'm a debater, so I'm
no
good
problem.
where that's going, right? The problem with sacrificing your son to go work at the mine is, what is he working for? If you were saying your son is working at the mine to develop the best equipment at the mine so that this community can become richer, that's the sacrifice.
Even if your child didn't choose that, and they're going through pain and you're not.
Yeah, sacrifice is painful.
Yeah, but you're not being sacrificed.
Yeah.
You're not being sacrificed.
Yeah.
Your child is being sacrificed.
No, but as a parent...
That's still a sacrifice.
No, but as a parent, if you're giving your child, you are feeling the sacrifice, and your child. Remember, Jesus said that, let this cup, if this cup could pass from me, let it pass.
Yeah, this is one of the bookmarks, footnotes that I have with the Bible and Christianity. But please continue, sir.
That part.
This narrative, yeah.
Look, I see why you would have it, because
I think you were making a point. I'm sorry, I derailed you.
No problem. But I think you're good to have this narrative, because the story doesn't make sense. Because what did we do to deserve such a big sacrifice? Right? That's the big punch that you have with it.
Are we going to debate religion? That's I don't like, because I love my Christian friends. Why would he not sacrifice bad people? Why would he not sacrifice evil?
Because he gave everybody free will. You can't sacrifice somebody else who you've given free will, but with your child, you've got the permission.
There's free will with your child as well? To be murdered? Could you not do anything else with all the power that you have? Could you not do anything else?
You could.
To cleanse sin?
You could.
Because sacrificing your son is also not really a form of free will.
You could.
Why not just let it be?
You could, but you chose.
Who chose?
I'm saying he chose. He could have done anything else, but he chose this.
And we're meant to celebrate that.
Well, if you'd want to.
Okay.
You know, another interesting thing about Christianity, and I think this is the other perspective that I have, right? I think Christianity is only for the elite.
Okay.
I don't buy into the understanding that somebody who was willing to sacrifice their child for you, that it's just a happy clappy, let's all jump into it and let's. Sure. I think there's a lot of value in it.
Sure.
So the way that I see it, it's a value system. Sacrifice was put in. Somebody sacrificed for this thing. So if you're going to be a part of it, there is a sacrifice, and that's the whole thing.
When you give that context, I understand why you'd say sacrifice is important, or the highest level of.
Okay. Yeah. But anyway, let's get into.
Are we not done?
I wanted us to get into the media space because of the podcast. Because
my alcohol is almost finished. I'm kidding. Drinking water. We're drinking water.
When I started, I said you know how in the pastoral place, and I'll always use this example, forgive me, they'll say, this pastor launched everybody else. This is the papa, the father of this thing, right? To me, you are the father of podcasting. Right. And And I think you've now given birth to all these children, right? Because if I were to see Mr. Beast or Joe Rogan, I mean, before I watched you, I've never heard of Joe Rogan.
Okay.
Right? A lot of these African kids are watching Penuel. All of them are, their first understanding of what a podcast is Penuel. Because remember, radio, nobody really watched them, right? I used to listen to Glenn and Unati in the mornings, Metro FM, and think, oh, this is quite a cool concept of people just chatting and, and now we've got Penuel, and I'm like, this is more what I am interested in, right? As the father of podcasting, what are your rules? Or what are your words? Because if everybody out there is looking, and I'm not looking for advice as to no, set up the camera in this way. No, that's all technical, right? As people usually go to TD Jakes and say, dude, you preached that sermon and everybody loved it. What is the secret? And he lowers his voice and he lets them know what are those.
Bishop, the great TD.
So coming to you as the father of podcasting in South Africa, and forgive me for saying this, but I'll say it, right? The reason why I'd never say MacG is the father of podcasting is because I believe the way he podcasts is very radio, right? And radio was already there. So because radio was already there, when I listen to MacG, oh, that's Glenn from Metro FM. He's just younger, he's just cooler, but it is what it is. Boo, 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 boo. The whole music, the artists, the stars, that's it. But Penuel came with people we never knew. These were not celebrities. And they sat down and this man allowed this person to open up their heart and, we got this message. And after listening to this thing, we all went out and we're like, yo, that was so for me, I'll always see it like that, to say you really birthed something very special, very, very Jesus vibe here, So what is it? What is your message about podcasting?
You're making me so uncomfortable. So I really struggle with compliments, number one. And how we were supposed to start this podcast was by me explaining that I have imposter syndrome. People don't know what a stunning place we're in right now. The studio we're in, the premises we're in, and how lavish it is. It makes me uncomfortable. The space and seeing the team working. It's brilliant. I don't even understand how you're doing it, and I'm in awe. So well done to you and the team. I probably one of the highest compliments you've given me or anyone's given me, and I'll try to accept it, even though I want to say I can't accept it. The one thing you highlighted that's very important is there may be like a godfather or an origin or a genesis of something, but you may find that many other people only engage at another level. When you say hip hop in South Africa, who do you like, AKA? You're like, no, but there were guys before, more ammunition, and you're like, well, I don't know them. And if you've never heard of Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, today we've got Stephen Bartlett, Chris Williamson, you're like, no, I know Pen. I get it. Nhlanhla Lux said something similar. He was like, there are generations of kids at Kaslami that don't know some of the Grootmans and the celebrities we know, because we grew up with them. Today, Grootman is like, MacG. They're like, but MacG is an OG. These kids that are going to tell you Drake is the greatest rapper of all time. Like, Drake. It's like, bro, Drake. And you're like, I get it. Kids that will be like, LeBron is the GOAT. Michael Jordan is an old nigga. And you're like, I get it. You came in a certain time, a certain space. When people said podcasting, the first thing you watched was Podcast and Chill, The Hustler's Corner, The Penuel Show. So I understand and I appreciate that very much. So I come off the inspiration of more than anyone, Joe Rogan, and then most of these other guys I've mentioned now, and there are more. The idea was to have open, long format conversations with no real topic, no real direction, and we're just chatting. And you realize that people want to talk, people have a lot to say, people have a lot to engage on. And in the African/South African/Black community, we don't have much of that. And people actually don't think we're that smart. We just want to see bums twerking. We just want to discuss gossip. We just want to talk about football. And there's an entire market globally of non-white kids who are incredibly intelligent, who are very well accomplished, etc., who don't have platforms to speak and tell their story. Like, I would invite so many different people, yourself included, where people are like, where do you get these intelligent young black people? I'm like, there are so many, but they've never had platforms. We only have celebrities. This is an actor, this is a DJ, This is a football player. And it's like, there's actually a lot of them and they are phenomenal. You think the cream of intellectual crop is at Silicon Valley. No. We've got our own black kids that are blazing trails in so many different ways. And I wanted to create a platform, not just for black, but where possible, as far as possible, black kids that have never been given platforms to just come and tell their story and to speak and to engage, and we debate and we laugh and we share things that people had never thought of. So that became my North Star, my guiding light. But I'm learning from the guys that are brilliant elsewhere, like Joe Rogan. And he's kept true to brand, where a lot of podcasters come in here for their own reasons, whatever they may be. Next thing, they pushing certain alcohol brand. Next thing, they pushing, ads. Next thing, they're like, please, what? Joe Rogan has never asked people to like, subscribe, comment, never. I know I do it at times because it's like, look, the dynamics may be slightly different, and also he makes money elsewhere. And luckily, Spotify gave him $200 million. They've just renewed for another. So he's got his own wins. We might have to do things differently, but I didn't go into the space for that. And anyone who would like to move in a similar fashion needs to consider that. You've got a brilliant book here called 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, one of the big boys of the PayPal mafia, one of the first major investors in Facebook. And his whole thing when he gives a talk, I'm not sure where he was giving the talk, speaking about 0 to 1, was to build something phenomenal, you cannot copy what has been done before. And he makes the example of, I don't know if it's him, I think it's him. To become the next Bill Gates at the time, because Bill Gates was Microsoft, to become the next Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg wasn't meant to create like a software business. He went and he built a social network, social media network now. To become the next Mark Zuckerberg, the idea of maybe like the next Mark Zuckerberg arguably could be a Mr. Beast. And you're like, I thought it would be someone that creates like Instagram. You're like, no, it's actually someone who created like a content creation on YouTube. Like, that's wild. The next Mr. Beast may be some Nigerian kid who's playing the drums. Like, it's so wild, but it's innovating in spaces and doing things and creating stories and building cultures and subcultures in spaces that people hadn't thought of, but people had been craving for a long time. I think Apple becomes something to speak about because what Steve Jobs and the guys did is they could have improved on what was there, but they didn't. They broke the model of phone and communication and design. There are people that design clothing. There are people that design buildings that are inspired by Apple. And you're like, but they started off with like MacBooks. And you're like, but the ideology of design and the thinking out of the box. And it's not like, oh, well, people want cheaper homes and smaller. No, it's like, how do we create something that people were not aware they've always wanted in terms of living experience? And anyone who lives in a space like this has made it and is it. Not that I was chasing that, by the way. I just wanted to have conversation and I didn't want it to be the same old people. That's why I still cringe now inviting celebrities. I do it where possible, where we can have a conversation outside of the work they do. It's to bring in different voices, different ideas. I mean, when I came out, was arguably a new voice. So why would I come into a space and then interview the same old people on alternative media? I'm not mainstream. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not some rich kid from... So why would I come into an alternative space and then just go copy you? Then what was the point? What was the point? The next big content creators on the African continent in South Africa are hopefully going to be speaking different languages. Maybe Nguni languages because they're the most spoken in this country. They may be going to be creating content maybe without microphones. They might take it all the way back to how we used to have chats and light a fire and sit around a fire and burn meat and chat in a native language in Sesotho. And you're like, everyone is on this shit. Why didn't we think of... It's like, because you guys were boxed. You guys were boxed in, like... The reason we love your Elons and your Kanye West is because some of these guys go back to first principle. What is the first principle of what we call vodcasting today? It's conversation. It's story. It's narrative. It's sculpting minds. It's sharing information, giving education, giving a plug, highlighting things, being excited, being scared, being nervous, shifting people's minds just through chat. Now, when you get to a point where you're like, dog, everyone's speaking about this thing. Hey, dog, but you see, you need to plug. We need the brand. You've lost it. You've gone into the same trap that mainstream got into, and you're going to become as irrelevant as mainstream because you're doing the same fucking thing that they were doing. If we are going to make money, maybe be like, I'm the first podcast that's funded by, maybe not the best example, but like the EFF podcast. It's like, well, we're backed by a political party. Where's the ANC podcast? Where's the, we're not funded by a brand, but we're funded by a political party. Someone could be like, our company has got the biggest podcast because, I mean, you look at Tiny Desk performances. Like, we decided that we think our employees are dope. They come here and their lunch sessions are always wild. What did you do over the weekend? Yo, dog, I met this chick. Can we put cameras here while you guys are having lunch? Keep it purist. And then every employee during lunchtime is watching the same fucking thing because they're like, I can relate. It's like, dog, you fucking owe me my hard drive. Where's my series? Yeah, but we fucking whipped your team. You're like, this is me. This is us. Because it's a subculture. Employees vibe and chat during lunch everywhere. What did you bring for lunch? What are you ordering? What do you want to chat about? How's the wife? Hey, do I need stress? Hey, my wife. You're like, they're keeping it pure because that's exactly what we talk about during lunch. You're like, hey, Donna, my girlfriend, I'm going to dump that bitch. She's pissing me off. No, my boyfriend, I think he might propose. Just keep it pure conversation. And if monetization is what you're after, be slick in how you do it. Find ways. There are so many ideas. There are so many ways of content creation we're not getting right. And if you're going to ask the secret, at least for me specifically, it's self-awareness. It's the most difficult journey any human being will ever go on in their lives. Because self-awareness is also the best path to true wealth. True wealth includes money, health, spiritual peace, etc. The best way to true wealth is starting with self-awareness, and self-awareness is the most difficult journey you'll go on, figuring out who the fuck you are, where you come from, what you're about, what you like, what you don't like, etc. And then you move from there. Once you've figured out on this journey who you are, what you like, zero in on that. Once you zero in on that and you're like, I like glasses. For some reason, I think my family used to work in glass fair. I love glasses, and what's going to make this glass story cool is I'm going to profile all types of different glass design around the world. And I'm going to tell the story because people don't really know what glass is. Do you know what glass is and why it does this, and give the history and then from there, gamify what you're doing, which has been a big driving point in the last couple of months. That's where Mr. Beast won. That's where Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg were winning. Right now, he's kind of gotten lazy. That's where the Google guys, the most non-spoken about, most dangerous company on the planet. That's what they're constantly getting right.
Is Google. I
Google
agree.
As a company, Google might be my favorite company in the world.
I agree.
Yeah, people don't speak about it. It's okay.
And I think they do it on purpose. They don't want their CEOs to Google owns the world. Your maps, Gmail. I mean, they know what you've been talking about since you were a kid.
So you guys pray, right? The Christians?
Yes.
Most other normal people, including Christians, when they search for answers, go to Google. So, and Google is everywhere.
They do.
All at once. They're listening to everything.
And I think Google has won because they make it seem like everything is free. You want a
That's
free
correct.
email? Get it. You want a free video?
Free website.
You want
all
free
these
music?
things, all
free
these
website,
tools.
Yeah.
So
they've won.
The gamification, well, life is a game. If you accept it. If you don't accept it, it's whatever you want it to be. But if you accept it, life is a game. And in this game of life, there are different games. Could be the school game. How do I excel in the school game? Then I must study harder.
Okay,
I must do past papers. Yeah. How do I excel in the dating game? No, apparently chicks like guys that smell nicely, if I'm well-groomed. Okay, so I'm winning. The game of business. If I read the business books, if I attend seminars, if I build a system, in this space that we're in, let's call it podcasting, there's a game. You need to figure out the game at a macro scale. So the biggest podcasters like Joe Rogan, Stephen Bartlett, etc. And then you must figure it out in a micro scale where you are operating. So you can try and be Joe Rogan here and you'll flop. You want to speak about aliens and psychedelics and people are like, hey, we don't know what the fuck this guy is talking about. At the micro scale, you're like, what do South Africans want to talk about? What stresses us out? Number one, in what language? This is where Uzalo becomes high watching. Some of the telenovelas, that's because they are in isiZulu. It's not by accident. So the language is very important. If you're gamifying for the South African audience, it's why our political parties speak vernac when they're on the streets, grassroots campaigning, because that's the game here. What do people want to hear? They want to hear about jobs. They want to hear about their favorite celebrities. They want to hear about football. I mean, when the work they're doing at Diski TV and the big paychecks that they get there through the betting websites they work with, it's because they're speaking to the people the way they want. Scheme GP, Against the Wall podcast, speaking in slang, some of his most watched episode, no one that knows English will ever understand. No one that knows a normal South African official language will understand, because Kulunywa is Tsotsi, Kulunywa Tanyane, which is prison. They speak this language that you're like, is this like a secret code? But at a micro scale, that becomes what's dope for the game. You're bringing something new and you're bringing something relevant. And then it's, how do I improve? Small things, because you're on a platform, audio. Don't fuck up your audio. Get good audio. If you can get dope visuals, do that. Do the visuals need to be, every time we mention someone, a face pops up, we cut to, does that work? If it works, like Johnny Harris, who's fucking brilliant.
Johnny Harris.
Then do that.
It's another level.
Jake Tran.
Don't know him.
James Yanni. There's a lot of these guys. I study these guys because, again, game. I'm trying to be the best rugby player in the world, so you want to figure out. But Johnny
Harris is definitely...
He is super dope.
Something else.
So you study these different guys and you're like, okay, this is self-awareness. So you're like, hey, this guy is dope. Let me do competitions. You're like, but that's not me. Let me bring girls and speak about, but so you were fucked by 5 niggas over the weekend. I'm like, I guess that could get reached, but this is not me. And chances are I'm not going to be able to scale and move because I'm not being legit. And then in the game, at least for someone like myself and some of the podcasts in South Africa, the games have ceilings. In a sports perspective, I guess the ceiling is winning the World Cup, Ballon d'Or, etc., etc. In this space we're in, it's subscribers, it's reach, it's trending. Now, if you're not in America, you're already fighting backwards. Maybe you can go to India, which is the biggest YouTube community in the world.
Although I do think a lot of it is bots, but okay.
That sounds like hate, but we'll allow it. We'll allow it.
Okay.
India's got the biggest YouTube community in the world. I think America's second. You'd be surprised by the top 10 for people that don't know. Places like the UK have got like 50-something million, whereas in South Africa we've got 20-something million, but we're also not number one in Africa. I think Nigeria, Egypt might be whacking us as example, but it's because of internet. Anyways, game. Figure out the game. And once you get to the top of the game, Podcast and Chill is the biggest podcast, etc. It's like, how do you scale? Then it's like, guys, if you want to scale as Podcast and Chill, and maybe they must pay me if they ever do this. On your network, have a show that speaks to the Indian community in India. This is not rocket science.
Yeah.
This is the game you're in.
Yeah.
Have a show on your network that is speaking in Zulu. How did you think of that? You're like, bro, we're in a game of audience and reach. And if you're telling me mainstream's biggest, Ukhozi FM, Ilanga, Isolezwe, Uzalo, it doesn't make sense if we're talking to not talk the language of the majority. Like, no one in America wants to listen to us speak. They've already got enough people there. But there are South Africans that would love to listen to Nguni languages, Sotho languages here. If you want to scale abroad, discuss Trump, Harris, and dive in. It may not have been a South African platform, but The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. He'll be watched because he's not discussing, hey, I just heard Cyril Ramaphosa, just pick. No one in America is going to watch. They'll switch off. They're like, they brought in a South African guy to discuss South African politics. Nope. Next. You double down on wherever the game says you must play. And then where you can, you innovate. How do you move beyond? How do you take podcasting to live audience, to get the audience to interact? To while we're here, we're live streaming. Questions are coming in now. Mpho, people want to know, why do you always say this thing? You're like, no one thought of that. You're like, but it's not rocket science. It's a game. In the interest of time and resources and your own personal vision, there are many things you cannot do, will not do, and it's okay. Just zero in on the game you're playing and scale. So to what you're asking about secret self-awareness, figure out who you are and what you're about. Secondly, I'll add, go find the role models that are more aligned to what you're doing. so that you can copy some of the cheats in this game of what they did right. Do they get a table? Do they have water? Do they have mics? How does it look? Do they have 3 cameras, 5 cameras, etc.? And then understand that you're in a game and figure out which game you're in and what are you trying to scale. Are you in the game of brand maximization? If you're in the game of brand maximization, I'll tell you in South Africa, do sports, do football. Easy money. All the sports betting houses will want to throw money at you if you want brands. The other brands are still a bit nervous. They censor what, but football, sports is huge. Brands are very uncomfortable with politics, but politics is big in this country. The next thing then becomes celebrity gossip. But do celebrity gossip in such a way that it's trendy. You're dropping files, of course, but brands are still like everyone's watching. So push these brands that people are alcohol, events, and pay for them, if that's the game you want. If you're in the game of influence, maybe a season Mpho Walsh and politics, you're like, I want to access all the politicians. Double down on that. Be like, I want to do politics, I want to do hardcore, I want to discuss political terms. All of them. What happened? Where's this going? And if Sis was doing pretty well, by the way.
He is very well, yeah.
But even if he was doing 10,000 views per episode, as long as he's winning in his game, where all 10,000 are only top politicians in South Africa and on the African continent, he's won.
Yeah, definitely.
He's won. So figure out which game you're in. If the game is conversation, if the game is story, if the game is, I want as many people to watch because in the back end I DJ. In the back end I do speaking engagements. I want to get booked. Then by all means, just figure out the game you're in and then go hard in that game. And there's a Japanese principle called Kaizen, which is about constant improvement. Mr. Beast talks about this a lot. Try in every single video. It won't be every single, of course, but as regular as possible to be like, okay, so we shot with pen. How can we improve? Okay, we should have maybe had coasters because the table kept getting wet. Our microphone management, at some point we started losing audio. Was the background distracting? Maybe let's get a more bland background. Was the stuff I was wearing distracting? Every time I wear a t-shirt, people are like, hey, I always read your t-shirts. You're like, okay, that's not what we want. Fly it. Should we get a female? Stephen Bartlett has also become a serious data scientist in the space. He studies the questions, the thumbnails, what works. They speak about the temperature of the room, and. So you're like, this is insane. And you do that. And then if you're enjoying the game, keep playing. If you're winning in the game, if you can push the game forward, by all means. If you're not enjoying the game, tweak it, change it. Just get the fuck out. Go do something else. Go get a job. Go make money. Go spend time with your kids, whatever it may be. Just be in the type of games that are conducive for the type of life you want to live. Why? Because you're self-aware.
You know, and this is something I thought about when I was driving the other day to say, our parents every Wednesday would go to home cell, right? Every Sunday would go to church, right? They'd listen to Umfundisi preach and tell them about what he's going through and how he's applying the Bible in his life, right? You'd look at the Muslim community every Friday. They'd go to prayer at the mosque. The kids go to madrasa
every day, and they're learning Arabic.
Yes. And our generation, we've got kids that are going to McG twice a week, right? We've got kids that are going to Penuel every Monday. And I said to somebody, I said, if we're not careful, pastors, mosques will wake up and realize the new mosques and the new churches are podcasts. And what I mean by that is I often listen to what I ask people to say, what do you get from the podcast? And the answer is similar to what Umama gets from the pastor. You know, what do you get from the podcast? This school assignment was stressing me out. I'm now relieved. I'm going to go try again. Mama, what did Mfundisi say? My husband didn't come back home. I was upset, but I've chosen to forgive him. Both these situations were fixed. The one by the pastor, the one by the podcaster. And I said, the beautiful thing, the interesting thing about the church is that it's got a financial structure. You have to give offering.
Sure.
There's a time for offering. There's a time for tithes. There's a time for, number two, there's a project. We're building, kune women's trip, kune this, kune that, right? And you're now seeing new podcasts saying, join the membership. We have a live conference. We have this, we have that, we have that. And the church has a 3-day conference on women empowerment.
Yeah.
And the podcast also has 3 days of maximization of whatever, you know. And I said to somebody that the young generation, when you say, did you go to church? They say, no, I don't go to church. Did you listen to? Of course, I never miss. I never miss an episode, you know. And I said to somebody that I think the future of podcasting will be where everybody will pay the tithe to their pastor. And the pastor will be the podcaster.
They're already doing it.
I think that's where it's
They're
going to
already
go
doing
to.
it. Man, I want to give a shout out. You spoke about something where the churches start seeing the value of podcast. I want to give a shout out to Mufti Menk. He's an amazing Islamic scholar. There are a couple of them out there. They leverage podcasts, TikTok. They're brilliant. I know there's a lot of Christian, and I'll give a shout out to this lady, Mpho Dagada. Her and her husband, Brandon September, I think is his surname. They've been doing very well in that regard, and there are many similar who are using these platforms to educate and school and uplift and motivate, and to make sure that, look, just because you have a phone and YouTube doesn't mean you have to go to the things that you shouldn't be going to. You can go to these things. The world is constantly changing. You know, one of the memes that I always find funny are these memes of men back in the day being in a bus holding newspapers. And then it's like present, many people holding cell phones. And then it's be like, oh, look at how we've fallen in society. And I'm like, those guys in newspapers could be looking at bums. Those guys could be looking at sports betting odds. They could be looking at any kind of rubbish. So just because, I read books, you know, we don't watch TV at home, we read books, but you're reading Mills and Boon and romance novels, and that's gonna somehow make you sharper magically. The next guy that you're judging, always watching TV, he's watching Bloomberg, watching CNBC Africa, he's watching the History Channel, he's watching National Geographic. The person, all you do is watch podcasts. It's gonna, you're like, but do you know what this guy is watching on the podcast? He's educating himself, he's learning something, he's going to apply. So the world is constantly changing, and you're very right in that there's a transition. So the church, and churches are one of my pain points, by the way. The church was meant to be, this is now, if we don't go too far back with colonization in Africa, and we bring it back to what churches were meant to be overseas and here. The church was meant to be the center of the community. The church is meant to be what the community is built around, so that at any given time when someone doesn't have a home, they can sleep in the church. At any time someone doesn't have food, they will be fed at the church. Anytime someone needs directions, anytime someone needs a book, a library, anytime someone needs knowledge, information, guidance, I need a job, I don't know where to get, but you go to church. The answers are there. It may not be the pastor, it will be the congregation, the community, etc. There are communities that still have that. In South Africa, big chunk is the Afrikaner community. They still meet at church, gather at church, network at church, and some black communities do it as well. You know, of course, the mosques and the synagogues for the Jews, they definitely meet and network there. The church was meant to be the center, and in it being the center, it became the place where minds were influenced. So if a politician wanted votes, if a businessman wants people to buy from them, you go to the church. You go either through the pastor or through the announcements or yourself. Guys, I just like to thank Pastor Banban. You know, I've opened this new thing. I'd really like your support. And you influence minds. Now, as an institution, we've moved now to mainstream media being the television and the radio, which started being that. Maybe not the feeding and the whatever, but it did a lot of good where it did. And now we're moving into the internet and alternative platforms. And we now have a responsibility, those of us that are aware, we have a responsibility to use our platforms like the church to be like, we're not going to disintegrate into places where I'm rich alone. And I've built a mega podcast like a mega church. I'm rich alone. My congregants are poor. I'm telling people, breathing hellfire. I'm selling these things. But my congregation is poor and I'm not uplifting them. You've got a podcast. And one of the things I was hoping you'd say, the kids don't go to church on Sunday. They plug into podcasts and you're like, what did you learn? And many of the kids come back being like, I found out Ubanbani broke up with whoever. Hey, I found out there's this new alcohol brand. And I'm like, that's what you learned? You watch 8 hours of podcasts a week and that's your takeaway? Versus other people like, and I found out there's this plug. If I go there, they give out funding. If I go there, apparently they're going mentorship. This guy said, apparently our politicians operate like, I didn't know I could register a political party. I learned, so I didn't know. And you're like, so you got fed, maybe not the word, but the word of knowledge in the space you're in. And you are now a better human being because of that. Yes, the best churches are the ones where the pastor is funny. It's a stand-up comedian. Where the choir and the band are brilliant. You're like, hey, these guys could kill it. Mainstream. The best churches are the ones where our favorite singers started there, where our favorite public speakers and readers started there, where the pastor not only does he do stand-up comedy, but he's brilliant at motivation. And can we say the same about the podcast? Like, even when I hate this guy, I don't like him, I think he's arrogant, I don't like this pastor, but I've gotten jobs through speaking to people in the comments. I've gotten work opportunities through some of the events that they host. And in that way, hopefully, in some way, some podcasts become this institution. And that's where people, they've already started in a small way, but in a major way are like, I will tithe here. Because I'll tell you that I got my job in the comments here when Pen said, let's do this. When he said, go to the DMs, when he organized and hosted an event, I showed up and I met my future wife there at that podcast event. Imagine, my father met my mom in church. I met my partner at a podcast event or at some event that they hosted or whatever the case may be. And we then, those of us who understand, have a responsibility to use our platforms for good and for upliftment.
Dangerous territory, because 10 years, 5 years from now could mean that, you're the Anglican. Someone else is the Dutch Reformed. The other one is the Lutheran. The other one is you're all podcasts, but...
No, it's already happening. You've got the hustlers, you've got the chillers, you've got the siblings, they've got their peeps. They've got their little cult groups. They've got their little supporters. I'm a chiller. So it's already happening.
Very interesting. Right, Penuel, as we close it off, because I know we can continue going, but as we close it off, what do you want to be remembered for?
For being dope. For being the greatest of all, the GOAT. Penuel the GOAT. I decided, how many years ago now? Maybe 5, 10 years ago, that there's no purpose in life. We live, we kind of keep busy and then we die. There's no real purpose, is what I kind of decided. So I was like, since we have to keep ourselves busy, what is the most stimulating thing for me personally? Do I want to become president? Do I want to become a billionaire? Do I want to travel to all the countries in the world? Do I want to have lots of kids, which I would like? Would I like to have the baddest girls on Instagram? Do I want to make movies and be Denzel? Do I want to make amazing music and be Kanye? In all the things that are out there, the thing that I ended up settling on was I want to influence as many minds as possible. I call it colonizing, because I say these spicy words like Penuelism is a cult. I want to colonize minds. I want to influence as many minds as I can physically possibly do with the platforms and the limited reach that I have. And I want to influence them for good, where my existence has left the world in a better place. Most other well-meaning people do the same, using different tools. I guess my tool for now will be conversation and talk, but I'm hoping to use other tools in various ways. And hopefully I'll be remembered for that. In tangible form, I would like Penuelism as a cult, which will hopefully become a religion or culture later. I'd like to be remembered for that. I want to leave Penuelism like Shembe, like Christianity, like Buddhism. I wanted to compete with the beliefs of the day in terms of who gets to own attention, capital, and mind space for people.
Interesting. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thanks, Holmes.